In this video, we will learn about the spread operator in JavaScript. ES6 introduced the spread operator in JavaScript, which is represented by 3 dots and helps an expression to be expanded in places where multiple elements or variables or arguments are expected. So let's take an example and see what happens when we use the spread operator, and what we mean when we say it expands an expression where multiple inputs are expected. So suppose we are given an array1, which is initialized with 3 elements 1, 2 and 3, and we create another array called array2, where using the spread operator we pass array1 as its first element followed by 4 and 5. Now let's directly console log array2 and see what happens when we use spread operator in this way. So when we console log array2, we get the output as an array of 5 elements, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means that using the spread operator, we expanded the elements of array1 inside array2. Therefore, array2 now contains 5 elements, which includes 3 elements from array1 and 2 elements that we added extra in array2. Now let's list down different ways in which we can use the spread operator. So while working with arrays, we can use the spread operator to combine arrays, to copy arrays, to concatenate arrays, as well as convert string to array. Apart from arrays, we can use the spread operator with objects, to combine multiple objects, to copy objects, and to concatenate objects. Finally, we can use the spread operator with function arguments, to replace apply, and to use apply for new. So now let's take example for each of these cases to understand how we can use the spread operator with arrays, objects, and function arguments. As we have already seen in the previous example how we can use the spread operator to combine two arrays, let's take a look again for reference. So in the example we had array1 with elements 1, 2 and 3, and we created another array called array2 in which we expanded the elements of array1 using the spread operator and added 2 more elements 4 and 5. So when we console logged array2, we got the output as an array of 5 elements which included 3 elements from array1 followed by the 2 new elements we added in array2. So now let's see how we can copy arrays using spread operator. We can create unique copy of an array using the spread operator where the copied array and the original array will have different references in the memory. So let's take an example to understand how we can achieve this. Suppose we have an array1 with elements 1, 2 and 3. Next we create a copy array1 wherein we expand the elements of array1 using the spread operator to be initialized as the value of copy array1. Now if we console.log copy array1, we get the output as 1, 2 and 3, which is identical to the elements of array1. Now to verify that both these arrays have different reference in the memory, let's push an element 4 to copy array1, which means that copy array1 should now contain 4 elements 1, 2, 3 and 4, whereas the original array, which is array1, should remain unaffected. So let's console log array1 and we get the output as an array of 3 elements 1, 2 and 3. Next, if we console log copy array1, we get the output as an array of 4 elements 1, 2, 3 and 4. So with this we have verified that both array1 and copy array1 are not related to each other and have different references in the memory. So therefore we can use the spread operator to create unique copy of an array. Now let's see how we can use the spread operator to concatenate arrays. When we say concatenate arrays, we mean that adding elements of one array at the end of another array. So earlier we used to do this using the function array.prototype.concat, which provided the functionality to add elements of one array to the end of another array. So firstly, let's see an example how we can concatenate arrays using the concat function. So firstly, we have array1 with elements 1, 2 and 3, and we create another array array2 with elements 4, 5 and 6. Now let's say we want to concat elements of array2 at the end of array1. So we will use the concat method for this. So we will write array1 equal to array1.concat array2, where we pass array2 as an argument to the concat function. Now if we console log array1, we get the output as an array of 6 elements, where the first 3 elements are the initial elements which were there in array1, and the last 3 elements are the initial elements of array2 which we added to the end of array1. Now let's replicate the same using the spread operator. So again we have array1 with elements 1, 2 and 3, and we have array2 with elements 4, 5 and 6. Now using the spread operator, we'll have array1 equal to an array where we expand the elements of array1 using spread operator followed by the expansion of elements of array 2 using spread operator. So when we console log array1, we get the output as an array with 6 elements, where the first 3 elements are the initial elements of array1 and the last 3 elements are initial elements of array2. Therefore, we have successfully concatenated array2 at the end of array1. Now let's see how we can convert string to an array using the spread operator. Now this is a unique case where we can use spread operator to convert characters of a string into individual array elements. So let's take an example to see how that happens. Suppose we have a string initialized to code whoop. Now in the next line we create an array characters where we expand the elements of the string within this array. Now when we console log the characters array, we get the output as an array which contains individual characters of the string as the array elements. Therefore, we have successfully expanded the string code whoop into an array where individual characters of the string are the elements of the array. Now moving forward, let's see how we can use the spread operator with object. Firstly, let's see how we can combine objects using the spread operator as we did while working with arrays. So let's take an example. Suppose we have object 1 with two properties a and b with the values 1 and 2 respectively. And we have object 2 where we expand object 1 within object 2 and we add another property c with value 3. Now if we console.log object 2, we'll get the output as an object which contains the properties of object 1 as well as the properties of object 2. This means that we have successfully combined object 1 and object 2 using the spread operator. Now let's see how we can make copy of objects while using the spread operator. While working with objects, we can make a shallow copy, that is, excluding the prototype of the object using the spread operator, which is a shorter syntax than object.assign, which is also used to copy objects. So let's take an example to see how we will do this. Suppose we have object 1 with properties a and b containing values 1 and 2 respectively. Next we create object 2 and we expand object 1 within object 2 using the spread operator. Now if we console.log object 2, we get the output as an object which contains the same property as object 1. And now again let's try to verify whether object 1 and object 2 have different references in the memory or not. For this we will add another property c to object 2 with the value equal to 3. Now let's see if the addition of property c in object 2 has affected object 1 or not. For that, let's console.log object 1 and from the output we can validate that there is no change in object 1. Now let's log object 2 and we get the output as an object with properties a, b and c. Therefore, we have successfully verified that by creating copy using the spread operator, we create individual copies which have unique references in the memory. Now we can also concatenate 2 or more objects using the spread operator. Let's say we have object 1 with properties a and b with values 1 and 2 respectively. And we create object 2 with properties c and d with values 3 and 4 respectively. Now if we want to concatenate object 2 at the end of object 1, we can do this by making object 1 equal to an object in which we expand the properties of object 1 followed by the properties of object 2. And when we console.log object 1, we'll get the output as an object which contains both properties of object 1 followed by properties of object 2. Therefore, we have successfully concatenated 2 objects using the spread operator. Now let's see how we can use the spread operator to pass multiple arguments to a function. Earlier we had the function.prototype.apply method if we wanted to use elements of an array as arguments of a function call, and we can achieve the same functionality using the spread operator. So let's take an example to see both the approaches. Firstly, let's try to pass multiple arguments using the apply method. Suppose we have a function example in which 3 arguments are required, a, b and c, and the function simply returns the addition of all the 3 arguments. Next, let's create an arguments array with elements 0, 1 and 2 which we want to pass as arguments to our function. Now we can pass the elements of this array as arguments to the function example by using the apply method and invoking the function call. So we will write this as example.apply where we pass this reference as null followed by the array of arguments. And when we execute this, we get the output as 3, which is the addition of all 3 elements. And now if we want to achieve the same using the spread operator, we can simply expand the array using the spread operator in the argument section of the function call, which will also give us the same output as 3. And we can see that using the spread operator, it is a cleaner and shorter syntax to pass multiple arguments to a function in the form of an array. And this can be very useful when we are working with inbuilt math functions such as max min, which take multiple arguments to provide an output. So let's take an example for the max method. Suppose we have array 1 with 5 elements and we want to figure out the maximum element within the array. We can simply use the spread operator to pass each element of the array as an argument to the max function to figure out the maximum element. So let's create a variable max and assign the output of the max method to it, where in the max method we pass the elements of the array 1 as arguments using the spread operator, and if we console.log max, we get the output as 8, which is the maximum element in the array. Now an interesting case arises when we try to use the apply method with the new keyword, where we cannot use apply to pass multiple arguments when we are invoking a constructor call using the new keyword. That is, when we have to call a constructor with new, it is not possible to directly use an array as arguments with the apply method, as apply does a call and not a construct. This problem is solved with the spread operator, as we can use it with both a call and a construct. So let's take a simple example for this. Let's say we have an array date data which contains the year, month and day, which we want to use to create a date object. So let's create a date object D and call the date constructor using the new keyword, where we are passing the arguments of year, month and date using the spread operator over the date data array. And when we console.log d, we get the output as the date which we specified in the array. This means that we have successfully used the spread operator to pass multiple arguments to a constructor call using the new keyword, which was not possible using the apply method earlier. I hope all this is useful to understand different use cases where we can use the spread operator. So that was all for this video. Thank you for watching.